A 2000 rating in chess is a monster rating. We said in the other video an 1800 player is sharp tactically, but they don't have the positional knowledge to compete with the higher rating players. Now, the 2000 is good tactically and positionally, but what separates the 2000 from the 2200, 2400, and so on? At this level, it comes down to how far you can calculate in advance and then analyzing the position in your head that you just calculated. The player that can do that better has the higher rating. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 games where I play 2000-ish players, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So let's dive in. Let's take a look. All right, so you'll notice in this first game, here we have the Sicilian. Right now, I'm pinning the knight. My opponent indirectly defends the pawn here, and that's because if I take the pawn, he just takes on g7, and let's say I did attack the bishop, he can just play queen d4, attacking the knight, defending the bishop, and this is not a great position for me. There's no reason to get into that. So first I just castle. Now I am threatening to win the pawn. My opponent plays bishop d3, which is a really good move because he had to have the discipline to realize that he misplaced his bishop and he had to move it again. f3 would have been a bad move, so that was a good move on his part. He attacks my knight, I attack it. I attack the pawn, and he plays f4, which is a weakening move, so that does weaken his diagonal. Now notice remember the theme of this video. 2000 chess and above, what separates the ratings is the fact that you're calculating deeply into a position and then analyzing that position. So it takes more than just calculation. It takes abstract thinking on top of calculation and visualization to analyze a position that you don't see. So it's very, very tough. And this, you'll see in this game that both players, both him and I, get into a position that's murky, hard to see, and we both have trouble reading it. I navigate the position better than him at the end of the game, but still, you'll see we both have trouble at some point. So I just throw in a check here. I get rid of my bad bishop. He attacks my rook, just simply defending it, and just bring my bishop back after the knight attacks. You'll notice his knight is misplaced on the side of the board, and it's not defended, so that's something to take note of. Okay, I expand in the center, and he piles up on this. So in this point, I take the time out to play d4. He takes. I was going to take back, but I didn't want to get into this position. And here, I guess he would just play bishop a5. And, you know, it's okay. It's about even, but I felt like I had more here, so I pressed for a win. So I went to h4 with the queen. Now, the point is I'm attacking the bishop. If the bishop does move, let's say, I would push, hit the queen, attack the knight. That's just one possibility. Of course, the bishop can move back and attack my queen, but just possibilities here. So he plays g3, trying to knock and deflect my queen off this rank. I did not want to leave, though, so I took a rook. The point is, if he takes with the rook, now, if I come back, there's only one piece attacking this pawn, so he can't take it. And if he takes with the queen, which he did, I play queen e4 check. Now, he blocked, and at this point, I just simply took this pawn. So now I'm still attacking this bishop. I got a pawn, but now he gets the pawn on c6. And this is what I calculated. Now, his king is open. Now, not only is this diagonal open, but this diagonal is open. So his king is definitely weak. Now my rook's under attack, my knight's under attack, and his bishop's under attack. It looks like a crazy position. It's actually completely even. But after what I played here, he's actually winning. But you'll forgive me why I played it when you see what his best response is. So after he takes, that's what I calculated. I played bishop b8. Now, it looks like a crazy idea, but he actually has to play knight takes c3 here. And he played what I thought he would play, and I'm sure most of you thought he would play, is rook takes on d7. Now, you can also say, well, it does open up his king, but it looks like his king is actually not too bad, especially since the queen can come back. So it doesn't look like the king is actually in harm's way. It looks like he can definitely get away with taking a piece. But I saw that it was actually harder than it looked. So I was able to look further and see that this actually gives him problems, this position. So it's at least a draw right now for me. Basically what it means is it's 0-0, but I'm the one in the driver's seat. So I start throwing around checks. Now after he moves, I was thinking about taking the rook here, but then figured after this, that's not good. This game is pretty much over. I mean, I'm not going to get his knight because he's just going to come back here, throw in a check, defend the knight, and after I come back, he can just simply come back and the game is over. So for that reason, I didn't take the rook. Again, I threw in a check, I push the king up the board, and I start launching a full-on attack of the enemy king. Now, I make sure he doesn't escape, so he comes back, and when he takes here, he's still fine, but he has to find the best moves. All I have to find is basic, easy moves to find. Now, it's really hard, and this is what separates players. Like, what separates a 2000, and what about a 26 or 2700? Well, a 2700 can read in advance that, several moves ago, that after g6, which is what I played, the king can actually move up and is actually safe here, believe it or not. Now, not only is that hard to analyze right now as you're looking at it, is the king safe or not? It's hard, if you're going to be honest with yourself, right? But really strong players can do that in advance several moves prior. So that's really what separates players 2000 and above, is that ability to calculate in advance, see a position in your head, and analyze said position without seeing it over the board. So that was the best move, but after this, he does not play h6. He understandably plays g4, but it's a blunder because I have check followed by check mate. Now stick around because these games do get better and more instructive. So that one was very instructive, I believe, though. And if you do find it instructive, now is the time to subscribe so you don't miss out on further content, because I have a lot of content coming out that's very, very helpful. Okay, so here we have the semi-Slav. And again, c5 is a move that a lot of players play. It's not bad, but it's not really good. It's not as good as you think. It just overextends. My bishop's still on this diagonal. It doesn't really do much. Now I press for the center, and what happens now is, now I have a pawn chain. So he got a pawn chain by playing c5 towards the queen side, which is okay, but now I have a pawn chain going towards the king, which is even better. So my opponent moves, we castle, and what I'm doing here is I'm just rerouting my knight to the king side so it can aim in on the attack at some point. Okay, he's expanding on the queen side, which is what he should do. He's playing to the side of the board where his strengths lie, which is what a good player should do. Okay, I start chopping away at his pawn chain, and now he plays knight f5. So I don't want to lose this bishop, and I don't really want to lose this knight either. So I figured this dark square bishop is not really strong at all because all his pawns are on dark squares. Therefore, my dark square bishop is the bad bishop. Okay, so that's kind of how you figure out which was your good bishop and your bad bishop. My light square bishop can run it all over the light squares, so that's the bishop I want to keep. So I simply chopped off the knight, and here actually is where my opponent made the decisive mistake. Again, the theme of the video is analyzing, calculating, and then analyzing the position ahead. In this case, all he had to do was calculate one move ahead and start analyzing. But it's still hard to analyze a chess position in general, nevertheless, something that's not even on the board yet. So he played g takes. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, of course that's bad because he opened up his king. Well, not so fast. So let's say we take some random moves. He was going to play king h1 and then put the rook here. And he actually looks pretty safe. It looks like he can hang in there. But the reason why it doesn't work here is because his pawns, he has the pawn chain, I have the pawn chain. Our pawns are interlocked. It's a closed position in the center. The center is closed. But I have all my pieces on the king side. So my pieces are going to quickly attack the king, and his pieces cannot jump over and get to the defense of his king. Even the knight that actually literally can jump over pieces can't jump over in this. It can't maneuver around to the king side easily in this position. Therefore, it's strategically lost. He should have actually played e takes f4, and he's actually totally fine here. It looks like he took away from the center, which he did, but he's totally fine, and this is actually solid in this position. Again, so a very strong player, even stronger than my opponent, would be able to analyze that, pretty quickly. So if you're stuck at this rating level, first of all, congratulations. You're strong, very, very, very strong chess player, but that's still what you have to work on. And also myself, that's what I would have to work on at a 2200 level, is analyzing positions, especially after calculation, analyzing positions that are in the future, basically. Okay, so I played knight h4 here, and I threw in a check to reroute my bishop to f3. And after he... okay, so here, this is instructive. I don't take or anything. I just keep on piling up the pressure. And after he takes back, I actually saw this when I was analyzing the game. So I checked with the computer, and the computer says this is the best move. I should have played queen h3. Now, the point behind queen h3 is, now, if he protects the bishop and stops checkmate at the same time, I still come here to f3. Now, he can't escape. So the queen's guarding the escape square for the king. If he takes, I take back, and now he has to give up his queen to stop mate. That's the only thing. So it's forcing my opponent to give up his queen. In the game, I played knight takes, which looks reasonable, and he actually gave up his queen anyway, but he shouldn't have. He actually should have just played king f1. It's still completely losing, but at least he would have more of a fight. After knight g4, this game is just completely destroyed. But yeah, my opponent jumped the gun here, so to speak, and then I just threw in a check, and my opponent resigned. So again, in that game, it was he took on f4 with the g pawn. He didn't realize how strong my attack would come, how fast it would come. So again, analyzing positions and seeing them ahead of time and trying to figure out, objectivity in the positions and reading the positions. Okay, so here in this game, I'm playing a 2036 player. Okay, I'm going for the two bishops. That's why I play that move. And here, my opponent is pinning me. I don't allow pins. So basically, if someone pins me, I don't let them stay there and pile up. I just challenge them immediately. And after the knight comes in here, okay, you notice how I got the bishop pair to begin with. Now I'm going to give back the bishop pair because that's a strong knight, and I don't want to get pushed around the board. And now what do? I castle to safeguard my king, but I also get my rook on an open file. After he takes, I take back, and now I'm attacking this pawn. My opponent defends the pawn. However, I could add another attacker to this pawn with tempo by playing queen c4 check. Notice I got this move in. I was able to use this tactic because of strategy. Strategically, he does not have a pawn on f7, so this diagonal is weak. So his king is weak. That's why he should have a pawn here. And if he doesn't have a pawn here, his king should be on h8 to not allow such tactics. So he attacked my rook, so I doubled the rooks. And he's taking pawns, but I'm grabbing pawns as well. Now, what's wrong in this game? What goes wrong is g6 right here. So g6, in his mind, he thought he's giving his king some air, or his queen, maybe his queen can come back and challenge my queen. But it just simply weakens the king. And when I bring my rook in, it's really, this is already game over here. And not only that, but now I have checks on this diagonal as well as this diagonal. His king is too open. So basically, it's seeing from this position on, you can outplay someone in this position and still not be 2,000, right? You can outplay this opponent who's rated 2,000 in this position and still not be 2,000. What do I mean by that? I mean, what you really want to achieve is actually the knowing of, is this position better or not right away? Being able to read positions and appreciating the strengths and weaknesses of positions. Right away, I knew this is a winning position for me, even though I'm not really up material, technically a pawn, but just by seeing g6, intuitively I felt this is a winning position. The king is too weak. Now, I triple up over here. This is Alyekin's gun. My opponent's coming to g5 because he wants to wrap around to f6, where not only will he have mating threats, but he'll also be blocking this diagonal. So that's a good idea. Unfortunately for him, his H file is open, and this rank is open, and this diagonal is open. It's way too much. So I'd play H1 here, and now he plays the aforementioned Queen F6 move, threatening checkmate, blocking checks, but it's too little too late. I'm able to, since his king is open and vulnerable, and there's files and ranks to his king, I'm able to just throw in a check here. After he moves, I use this another open diagonal to throw in a check here, and now I throw in a check on H8. The point is, he resigned here because if he comes to G7, he gets checkmated, and if he plays the best move, queen takes, I would just take his queen, and after this, I take an F7. You can say, well, after you take his queen, he can come down here. First of all, I'm up a queen, and second of all, I would just take that rook anyway. So that game, another instructive game, but let's go on to the last and final game here. In this game, my opponent is 2,000, almost on the dot. And this was the toughest game. This is going to be the toughest game of the video. Now, I'll show you why. And here, again, pinning the knight, he gets out of the pin and piles up on a pin piece of my own. Notice how I don't care if he's going to get a pawn. I'm more concerned about development, so I castle. So in this position, I castle, and he correctly takes the pawn and attacks my bishop. I move my bishop out of the way. Again, if he takes here, that would be a mistake because I would get my queen into D6. So we're really focusing more on strategy and positional chess at this level. A player wouldn't play that. Maybe someone lower rated would grab a pawn here, but then after this, that would cause him trouble. He would have to play F6 to block the checkmate. And then after rook E1, I'm just piling up. It's way too hard to defend this. So my opponent just castled correctly. I brought my bishop to diagonal where I'm hitting the knight and going after the king. He defends by playing in the center, which is good. Now I played H5, Queen H5, because I wanted to play F3, but F3 blocks in my queen. So I figured I'll play Queen H5 first, so I get my queen out, number one. And number two, now F3 is very, very powerful. If he plays a random move, if I play F3, now he's in trouble because if his knight moves away, he gets checkmated. So he takes on C3, I play F3, and now his point was to use C3 as a pivot square, not just to get a pawn, but to use it as a pivot square. So now, after I play F3, he throws in a check, uses that open diagonal against me, and I should play King H1 here. I was going to play King H1. My intuition was King H1, and here's where it comes into advance of analyzing ahead of time, calculation mixed in with analysis of the prospected position in the future, I guess you can say. I played Bishop F2. Now, the point is, if I played King H1, he can't play Knight F6, blocking mate and attacking my queen, because my bishop on H4 would chop the knight off. And now if he takes, he gets mated, so he would have to play G6, and then I would slide in, and now he can't avoid check mate. So, but I saw in this position, if you go back, after this check on D4, I played Bishop F2 because I figured Bishop F2 has to be good because you're blocking the check, hitting the queen, and you're also still hitting the knight. However, my opponent has Knight F6 here. So, and I should go back and say, even if I did play King H1 here, it's not as winning as you'd think because he plays F5. And after I take the knight, yes, I'm up a piece, but he has 3 pawns for the piece, and he has pawns in the center. It's actually only slightly better for me. But anyway, so again, Bishop F2, he goes back to F6. I take, he takes, I take. I wound up getting a pawn back. He's still up 1 pawn, though. So I attack the rook, and he gets my bishop. So now I do not have the bishop pair, but what happens is the bishop that he took was an opposite color bishop to the one he has. So basically what happens is we have opposite color bishop endgame. Now right here from this position, I saw this as a draw. So even though he's up a pawn, he could even be up 2 pawns sometimes. Opposite color bishops is a draw, but you just have to kind of understand the position and start appreciating positions. And the only way to do that is to play more chess, get better at tactics, actually, which actually not only helps you with tactics, but understand, appreciate positions, because you'll see the power of certain positions. But here I just doubled up on the rooks. I traded, I attacked the pawn, and after he comes into the position, I just simply have the same threats and tactics he has. I go for the same thing that he did over here. And after I throw in this check, I could perpetually check him all day, but I decided to throw in king f5 at some point, because I'm setting up a mating net. This would be checkmate. If you're ever taking the 3 squares in front of the king, you're setting, and you have a rook, you're setting up a back rank mate. If you want to call it a side rank mate because you're on the side, that's fine, but that's what it is. And if he can't even run away, actually, because this pawn guards g3, so that would be checkmate still. So he has to play bishop d3, which of course he found, but it gives me a pawn here. He goes after this pawn, and now we just trade down material in this position, and we eventually agreed to a draw. Now, in this game, basically a couple of takeaways is just realizing that opposite color bishops in that position was a draw, and also that point of the game where I got to the position where it looked like I had good prospects and I was winning, but I had to just keep a cool head and just actually realizing the power of the position. So I thought I was way more winning than I was. Even if I played correctly, king h1, f5, taking the knight, being up a whole piece, this is actually only plus 0.34 according to the computer. So basically, it's basically even. So just with these 3 pawns and these pawns in the center, and my bishop has trouble coming to this diagonal, it's actually a pretty even game. So there you go. There you have it. Like in this position, in this game right here, I had trouble analyzing and reading the true objectivity of the position. Well, there you have it. If you like this video, make sure you check out this one. It's another helpful one. And also make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss further content. Now get out of here and go play some chess.